Getting demoted at your age. You must be pretty incompetent. I work in the general affairs department at a cosmetics company. One day, the president, Jennifer Miller, suddenly ordered my demotion. Surprised by the sudden transfer, I noticed that my colleagues looked at me with pity. It was because the branch I was transferred to was known for rampant harassment. I became a target of the notorious manager, Nancy Smith, and was looked down upon every day. Is your wife incompetent too? A little while after my demotion, my wife unexpectedly visited the office. Though she came as a surprise, I was nervous about Nancy finding out. And just my luck, we ran into her. Nancy laughed mockingly when she realized that my wife was visiting me. But the moment my wife turned around, Nancy's expression turned to shock, as if she had seen something terrifying. My name is William Brown, 61 years old. I work in the general affairs department at a cosmetics company, managing office supplies, coordinating with vendors, and handling meeting documents. I also create the company newsletter, focusing on who excelled that month, both in content and design. As a result, it has been well received by the employees. Suddenly, I was ordered to be demoted. One day, I was called by the president, Jennifer Miller, and given the notice of my transfer. Let me be clear, I haven't caused any problems at the company. I have always worked diligently every day. However, Jennifer wouldn't explain the reason in detail. Why am I being demoted? I asked. You will go to the designated branch and do what needs to be done. She ordered me in a calm tone, without giving more details. In her youth, she worked as a sales clerk at a department store's cosmetics section. After that, she started her own business and has managed a cosmetics company as president ever since. The products she produces are all popular, receiving a flood of orders from overseas. She is a millionaire with total assets of about $10 million and owns several properties in the city. While she focuses on developing talent as a shrewd manager, she is known to be ruthless to those who harm the company. Despite her cold demeanor, she has a good eye for people, and many employees admire her. I am one of them and have great respect for her. So when Jennifer suddenly ordered my demotion, I thought I was dreaming. At least tell me the reason. Did I do something wrong? I persisted. Jennifer showed a stern expression. No, you are doing very well. That's why I want you to go to the branch. Then, Jennifer motioned for me to come closer and whispered in my ear. Her words left me wide-eyed, unable to respond immediately, but seeing the seriousness in her eyes, I knew she was sincere. Jennifer looked straight at me and said, "This is for the sake of our company. Accept this transfer order, and this is a token from me." She pulled an envelope from her desk drawer and handed it to me. It felt thick, like a wad of bills, but also had a sterile rigidity. I accepted it and tucked it into my pocket. I understand. I humbly accept the transfer. Thus, it was decided that I would be transferred to the branch 2 weeks later. Afterward, I returned to the General Affairs Department and informed the employees about my transfer. They were all deeply shocked. What? William is being transferred? Yeah, I didn't expect to be moved at my age either. President Miller is known for bold actions, but this was just as expected. They couldn't hide their confusion at the sudden news. But what's done is done. The employees will take over my tasks. They are capable, so the handover should be smooth. By the way, which branch are you going to? One of the employees asked. I gave the address of the branch. It's a regional branch west of New York. However, upon hearing the address, their faces suddenly tensed up. What's wrong? Why those scared faces? William, don't you know? There's a rumor that the branch is really bad right now. Their words left me puzzled. Having worked at the headquarters for so long, I was out of touch with rumors and stories about other branches. The employees exchanged looks and gave me sympathetic glances. Seeing their expressions, a wave of unknown anxiety started to wash over me. I felt scared to remain silent, so I laughed it off. Come on, don't make me nervous. It's not like I'm going to a dangerous place. Well, it's just a rumor, but ever since a certain scary person arrived at that branch, sales have skyrocketed, one of them said. The employee's dark eyes seemed to hint at a grim future for me. From what they said, there seemed to be some suspicious rumors about the branch I was headed to. They say sales have surged since Nancy Smith became the manager there. Increasing sales is a good thing, isn't it? What's the problem? In exchange, the turnover rate has also skyrocketed. Nancy, the woman in question, was promoted from manager to director last year. She transferred to the current branch from elsewhere, and since then, sales have risen, but so has the turnover rate. I couldn't see the connection between her and the high turnover, but thinking about going to a place with such shady rumors made me anxious. Is the president really sending me to such a workplace? I recalled my conversation with Jennifer earlier. If anything happens, I'll rely on her. 2 weeks later, after completing the handover, I was transferred to the branch. Seeing off the employees, I arrived at my new workplace with a sense of nervousness, not knowing what would happen next. Wait, I'm in sales. Originally, I was supposed to be assigned to the administrative department, but due to a shortage of staff, I was reassigned to sales. The assistant quit suddenly, but don't worry, William, we won't push you too hard, an employee in the sales department assured me, and I reluctantly agreed. Does President Miller know about this change? No, it's just our situation here. There's no need to report such things. Such unreasonable changes never happened at headquarters. If plans changed, we were always informed in advance, and there were never any problems. It seems that things work very differently here compared to headquarters. Moreover, the atmosphere in this workplace is completely different. Since arriving, I have passed several employees, and they all had gloomy faces. The people at headquarters were always lively and full of energy. It was vibrant and a conducive environment for working. However, the atmosphere here is heavy and overall gloomy. This looks really uncertain, I muttered to myself. I was then guided to the sales department by an employee. As soon as we entered the department, I heard shouting. Why can't you even do something this simple? Startled, I turned toward the voice and saw a man, who seemed to be the manager, yelling at a junior employee. The young employee was repeatedly bowing and on the verge of tears. The manager continued his tirade, making the atmosphere in the department unbearable. Unable to watch any longer, I whispered to the employee who had guided me, "Come on, there's no need to shout like that." However, the employee, seemingly used to it, sighed and said wearily, "It's unavoidable. Those are the director's orders." The word director made me tense up, remembering the information from the General Affairs Department. Wait, director. It's Director Nancy. She's on a business trip right now, so the manager has been ordered to train the subordinates like that in her absence. Apparently, the manager was yelling at the junior employees under Nancy's instructions. But she's not here, so why are they still following her orders? I asked. The employee looked down with a dark expression. Well, here is a bit. He trailed off, looking around nervously. Before I could ask more, I was supposed to give you your supplies, William. Let's go to the storage room. Yes. Okay. Although I found his sudden change of topic suspicious, I followed his lead. Once we were in the storage room, he didn't get any supplies but started speaking in a low voice. I think it's safe here. Safe from what? I had no idea what he meant. With growing unease and frustration, I wanted him to quickly tell me what he was hiding. Sensing my impatience, he began to speak. Actually, Director Nancy installed cameras in the sales department. Cameras? It wouldn't be unusual to have security cameras, but the employee silently shook his head. What he said next left me speechless. The cameras Nancy installed were pet cameras. These are useful products in households with pets, allowing owners to check on their animals when they are not home. Nancy said she placed them to monitor the employees, to ensure they were working properly even when she wasn't there. The employee told me that if anyone didn't follow her instructions, she would call them later and reprimand them. It felt like they were constantly being watched by her, even when she wasn't physically present. As a result, the stress had caused 3 employees to leave this month. Moreover, one of them was still recovering at home. Hearing this, I couldn't contain my anger. Pet cameras. What does she think the employees are? Well, since the pet cameras were installed, fewer people are slacking off, and the department's quotas are being met. So that's why this branch's sales have improved, he explained. I instantly understood. However, despite what he said, it seemed that he and the other employees were suffering mentally and physically. Their eyes were vacant. At the branch I worked at, the desk prepared for me was a dirty, second-hand item. If I leaned on it slightly, the desk's legs would wobble. It felt like one of those uncomfortable cafe tables. I frowned, but if I worked with a displeased expression, the pet camera would capture it, and I'd get a lecture from Nancy later. Observing everyone while working since the morning, I noticed they were all diligently focused on their tasks. Those going out for business hurried out, and some would answer the phone on the first ring. Nancy's strict management resulted in above-average concentration on work, but the stress of being constantly monitored was immense. However, the surveillance was only in the sales department, where Nancy was in charge. The only allowed breaks were during lunch and bathroom visits. Even bathroom visits were restricted to twice a day. Hearing such unreasonable rules, I felt inwardly dissatisfied, but I heard that any rebellion would result in relentless nagging from Nancy. There's a saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, but Nancy's rules were extremely tyrannical. May I go to the restroom? To go to the restroom, you must say this phrase to get permission. I thought I should be able to go to the bathroom whenever I want, but my bladder couldn't wait. After using my precious first trip, I was heading back to my department when my phone rang. It was a call from headquarters, so I answered it in the hallway. Hello, yes. I was so focused on the conversation that I didn't notice someone behind me. As soon as I ended the call and turned around, I couldn't help but gasp. Standing behind me was a woman in her mid-40s with a furious expression, glaring at me. What surprise to see the director's face. How rude. I looked at the employee ID hanging around her neck, which read Nancy Smith. It was the worst way to meet her, and I stammered nervously. I'm so sorry. This was our first meeting, so it seemed she had just returned from her business trip. You knew her, right? Were you on the phone during work hours? She aggressively closed the distance between us. The headquarters called, so I was just having a brief conversation. I'm older, but she's the director and is highly feared by everyone, so I had to choose my words carefully. The headquarters? Weren't you just slacking off, old man? No, absolutely not. I tried to defend myself desperately, but she didn't seem to believe me. She looked me up and down and snorted. Don't think you'll get any special treatment just because you're an old man. With that, Nancy walked away briskly, leaving me behind. Since she returned from her business trip, the workplace atmosphere has become even heavier. When a young employee makes a mistake, Nancy's hysterical yelling echoes, and she treats everyone like slaves. Being new, I've been ordered to clean the bathrooms and come in early every day. Nancy, feeling like a queen while treating employees like slaves, is even more dangerous than the rumors suggested. My anger toward her grows daily. A few weeks after coming to the branch, Nancy asked me why I was demoted. The reason? Well, the truth is, Jennifer didn't give me a clear reason either. But I couldn't just say that, so I evaded the question. Maybe it's the president's decision. When I answered, Nancy burst out laughing. Did you do something to the president? You must be really hated. Her mocking laughter irritated me, but Nancy didn't notice my anger and continued with a creepy smile. Getting demoted at your age? You must be really incompetent. Being called incompetent made my anger flare up. Calling me incompetent is unfair. Demotions are for the incompetent, right? What's wrong with calling an incompetent person incompetent? She looked down on me and then walked away briskly. A few days later, one morning at work, I got a call from my wife. She was at the branch and asked if I could come to the entrance. I hurried to the entrance and saw my wife waving at me. I quickly went over to her, checking to make sure no one else was around, and asked, "Why did you come here so suddenly?" With a playful smile, she said, "It was a surprise visit." "A surprise? I'm in the middle of work. I was shocked when I got your call." Realizing it wasn't an emergency, I sighed in relief. As my tension eased, I noticed I had slipped out of using formal language, but my wife told me not to worry about it. Her actions have always surprised me. Sometimes I envy her boldness, but other times it gives me a heart attack. If Director Nancy sees us here, I'll be in big trouble. What about me? Nancy appeared at the company entrance, looking at me suspiciously as she walked over. It was an incredibly bad time to run into her, and I felt my heart freeze. "What are you doing here? Did you finish the documents I ordered yesterday? It will be done by noon." "Noon? I told you to finish it by tomorrow morning. Don't change the deadline on your own." Being scolded in front of my wife completely ruined my dignity as a husband, but she gave me the task after hours yesterday, forcing me to come in early today. Besides, what she's saying now contradicts what she said yesterday. Yesterday, you said as long as it's done by the day after tomorrow, didn't you? This isn't fair. What are you saying? I'm wrong. Since when do old men like you get to talk back? Nancy's eyes narrowed, and she took a more intimidating stance when I contradicted her. Changing her words frequently is one of her bad habits. Moreover, she always confidently believes she's never wrong and pushes the blame onto her subordinates. I've noticed this pattern ever since I transferred to this branch. Anyway, stop wasting time here and get back to work. Her shout echoed through the entrance, making me hunch my shoulders. At that moment, my wife, who was standing in front of me, blinked rapidly and looked at me with concern. To ease her worry, I forced a pained smile. "Is that woman someone you know?" I thought she was a part-timer. It seemed that Nancy had mistaken my wife for a part-time employee from the moment she saw her. "I apologize for the late introduction. This is my wife." My wife turned and gave a polite nod to Nancy. "You brought your wife to the company. You must be really close, huh? This isn't a dating spot." She yelled at me with a red face. I had heard from employees that Nancy is still single and has failed in 50 consecutive attempts at matchmaking. Knowing that someone she looks down on is married must have hurt her pride. An incompetent old man who can't even do his job right, acting all lovey-dovey. How disgusting. Nancy sneered at me as if she were looking at something revolting. She then mimicked vomiting and let out a huge sigh. Unable to watch any longer, my wife stepped in to defend me, saying, "I came here on my own, so it's not his fault." But Nancy just snorted at her. "So your wife is useless too, isn't she?" Those words left me momentarily speechless. "What did you just say?" "I said incompetence belongs together." Nancy looked at us and burst into laughter. In the midst of laughing, she made a snorting sound like a pig and quickly covered her mouth with her hand. Being mocked by such a vulgar woman infuriated me. "Director, you picked the wrong people to laugh at." "What?" My wife slowly turned around. At that moment, Nancy's face turned pale, her mouth open in shock. She seemed extremely shaken, unable to comprehend the situation. "Why is the president here?" My wife, or rather Jennifer, smiled quietly. "She is, in fact, the CEO of my company." Jennifer had been silently listening to our conversation with Nancy, and this was the first time she spoke. "Is there a reason I need to sneak into my own branch?" In contrast to Jennifer's calm demeanor, Nancy was flustered and gaping like a fish. But you have different last names. I can't believe you're married to William. I use my maiden name for business purposes. Miller is Jennifer's maiden name, and we got married after she started the company. Jennifer kept her smile as she continued talking to Nancy. My husband, who is also my subordinate, is under your care, Director Nancy. Nancy didn't know how to respond and could only manage an awkward, forced smile. When I'm with my wife, she has a gentle demeanor, but at the company, she shows a dignified presence as the president. That's why I also use formal language during work. So, you were asking why I'm here. I came to hear William's report. Report. Nancy immediately looked at me. I assigned William to this branch under the pretext of a demotion to conduct an inspection. Inspection. Yes, I was ordered by Jennifer to be demoted from the headquarters. The reason was to investigate the branch. Why us? There's nothing wrong here. Realizing she was secretly being investigated, Nancy desperately tried to prove her innocence. There was a report to the headquarters addressed to the president, claiming that harassment was rampant in this branch. A few months ago, Jennifer received an anonymous report stating that multiple employees had resigned from the branch, possibly due to harassment by you, Nancy. To verify the truth of the harassment allegations, Jennifer decided to send someone to investigate. Young employees were seen as mentally fragile, and experienced ones would be too suspicious, so she chose her trustworthy husband, me. After my demotion, I reported everything I observed to Jennifer. Through employees' rumors and my own observations, I discovered that Nancy's harassment was indeed the cause of the resignations. It's clear that Director Nancy's harassment has created a toxic work environment. No longer needing to hide, I dropped my submissive act and looked directly at Nancy, revealing my true identity. I saw her face twist from confusion to anger as she glared back at me. Just because the president is here, you're suddenly acting tough. That's cowardly. And don't blame everything on me. No, you caused trouble even before coming here, didn't you? That was before she became a director. As a manager, Nancy harassed female colleagues at another branch, driving them to resign. This information came from talking to the employees. Indeed, there was a female employee who suddenly became depressed and resigned. I secretly contacted her to confirm the facts. Nancy had been intimidating subordinates and taking credit for their work for a long time. As a director, you pressured your subordinates and even monitored them during your business trips. This has all been reported. I'll confiscate that pet camera. I never ordered you to spy on the staff. Confronted by us, Nancy turned pale and started trembling. I was confident we were close to breaking her, so I said firmly, "Apologize to everyone you've wronged. You will soon face severe consequences for your actions." Jennifer also glared at her with a stern expression. Even though she remained calm, she was clearly upset about her valued employees being mistreated. She must be feeling even more outraged than I am. I hoped that Nancy would admit her actions and accept the appropriate punishment. Before I realized it, a crowd had gathered around us. Since Jennifer, the president, was at the entrance, employees who were unaware of the situation were watching to see what was happening. Among them were employees from the sales department, their faces tense. Frustrated by Nancy's continued silence, I urged her to reflect again. Staying silent won't absolve you of your sins. First, go to the sales department and apologize to everyone. Nancy suddenly looked up. I didn't harass anyone. She glanced around nervously and then put her arm around a young employee nearby. I'm nice to everyone, right? The pressured employee nodded, trembling. See, this kid says I'm not at fault, so I'm innocent. Nancy laughed, but the young employee's face was clearly strained. He was trembling, and it was clear he was being intimidated. He's trembling. Please let him go. When I told her to release the employee, Nancy glared at me. Suddenly acting tough because you're the president's husband. Huh? It doesn't matter. I'm pure, both inside and out. Her voice echoed through the entrance. How many times had I heard her hysterical yelling? When she yells near my ears, it reverberates in my head and makes me dizzy. I forcibly shook my head to clear it. So you're saying you haven't harassed anyone, Director? I asked. I've told you repeatedly, persistent men are disliked, she retorted. Jennifer reacted subtly to her words. Director Nancy, you shouldn't be emotional. Losing your composure only hurts both yourself and others, Jennifer said calmly. Why is a man like you married to the president? Because she's the president. Unable to argue further, Nancy glared at me in frustration. Anyway, I'm innocent. The testimonies are fabricated by my subordinates to frame me. Even now, Nancy refused to admit to the harassment. In response, I pulled something out of my breast pocket. This is a voice recorder. I've been recording conversations in the workplace. Seeing this, Nancy's pale face turned bright red. Eavesdropping is despicable. President, this filthy man is the one who should be condemned. But Jennifer sighed in exasperation. I gave William this voice recorder so we could verify the authenticity of the evidence. What, Director? You seem to be unusually antagonistic towards William. If you have complaints, you can direct them to me, his wife. Well, that is, Nancy could be bold with subordinates, but she couldn't defy the company's top executive. Thanks to William's detailed reports, we discovered that you were the cause. That's why I'm here. Jennifer stepped forward and glared at Nancy. Her tone was far from the gentle one she used with me. It was a very cold tone, directed at someone clearly identified as the enemy. Do you have anything to say in your defense? I remembered everything Nancy had done to me. Each act was a heinous insult that trampled on my feelings. For the sake of those she had hurt, Nancy deserved appropriate punishment. You will pay for calling me an incompetent old man and treating your subordinates like slaves. All eyes, mine, Jennifer's, and the employees who witnessed everything, were on her. Nancy began to sob, large tears welling up in her eyes as she sniffled repeatedly. I'm so sorry. She suddenly apologized and collapsed to her knees. I was under so much stress from my role as a director. I ended up taking it out on everyone, she cried, blowing her nose into a handkerchief, smudging her foundation. Surely you understand, President, how difficult it is to be in a management position. Nancy tried to elicit sympathy from Jennifer, but her expression remained unchanged. It seems I have given you a very difficult role. Yes, exactly. When I was promoted from manager to director, the pressure was overwhelming. Sensing a reaction, Nancy played the tragic heroine even more to evoke sympathy. I've been trying so hard, but everyone treats me like the villain. It's so unfair. Then let's strip you of your director position and demote you to the level of a new graduate. Yes. Well, what? After responding energetically, she asked again. If you are demoted, you'll be free from the responsibilities of management. However, your salary will also match that of a new graduate. Jennifer smiled slightly as Nancy started sweating nervously. Being demoted to the level of a new graduate meant she would be lower than her subordinates. For someone as prideful as Nancy, this was an outcome she desperately wanted to avoid. She bent over, pleading weakly with Jennifer. No, please don't demote me. I'll continue to work hard as a director. Really? Then as a director, take responsibility for your actions, Jennifer asserted firmly as the president. Suddenly, the sales department employees rushed over and started criticizing Nancy. We have been harassed by the director. The colleagues who resigned did so because the director caused them mental and physical harm. It was clear everyone held deep resentment towards Nancy. What do you all want? Ganging up on me, making me the villain. As the employees revolted against her, Jennifer delivered the final blow. The next executive meeting will determine the appropriate disciplinary action for the director. Until then, you are to stay home. What? President, are you dismissing me? Ignoring Nancy's plea, Jennifer began to leave the company. At least tell me if I'm being fired or demoted. Nancy tried to follow her but tripped and fell to the floor. Despite her tears, no one offered her a hand, and everyone returned to their duties, ignoring her. With evidence and testimonies, Nancy was found guilty of harassment and received disciplinary dismissal. Additionally, she was sued for damages by employees who suffered mental anguish because of her. Some former employees who couldn't return to work due to her persistent harassment also demanded substantial compensation. Nancy refused to pay, claiming that failure to reintegrate into society was their own weakness, which led to a protracted legal battle. However, with the overwhelming evidence, Nancy lost the case and had to pay compensation to everyone. Faced with claims exceeding $100,000, Nancy was furious. Even after being fired, her life became financially strained due to the debt, and she resorted to targeting wealthy men as a last resort. She spent more time on matchmaking, desperately searching for high-income partners, but failed every time. Even when she finally met someone close to her ideal, they would reject her, leaving her back at square one. Eventually, she went through over 100 matchmaking attempts, earning the nickname, "the woman who demands marriage at a glance" in the community. Yet, she didn't give up on repaying her debt and achieving her dream of marriage, continuing to frequent matchmaking events. However, her bad character often led to frequent disputes with both men and women. It's likely that soon she will be banned from these events, pushing her even further away from marriage. As for me, I successfully completed my mission and returned to the General Affairs Department at headquarters. Jennifer looked relieved and wore a calm expression. Having been at the branch, I had fewer opportunities to be with my wife recently. Now that I'm back at headquarters, I thought of inviting Jennifer to dinner tonight. When I asked her if she wanted to have dinner together after work, her eyes widened. Usually, she was the one inviting me, so she said it was rare for me to invite her. But after her initial surprise, she smiled happily. I responded with a smile. Looks like my surprise was a success.